Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers recently released a compilation album of live tracks from their stand at Fillmore. What do we think about that? Also, what's the hoopla around Netflix's Wednesday? How good is the English on Amazon Prime? And what do we think about the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special over on Disney+? All that, plus a little more, on this week's episode.
Alabama Take Projection.
Hello again, it's Taking It Down, a podcast where we cordially unpack TV and film for progressive, busy Alabama people. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Blaine Duncan. Taking It Down exists because not only did I find myself missing the Vulture TV podcast, but I often find myself thinking through why I liked what I liked and why I disliked what I disliked when it comes to TV, movies, books, music. And with an English degree and a teacher's mind, I try my best to offer some insight worthy of your time. My ideas are not the only set of viewpoints, so you're in luck with me every week. Adam Morrow, who is an erudite musician with a penchant for literature. We'll also have Donovan Runwald, a media specialist with encyclopedic knowledge on film and more. And Natalie Morrow, the first person to ask about fantasy, sci-fi, comics, trashy, reality TV, Beyonce. From us, you'll get the obvious and the obscure. But here they are. Let's get their individual hellos. First, you need radishes. This man has radishes. It's Adam Morrow.
It's true. I do. I'm about to do some research into pickling radishes. So if anybody needs any tips, ask me in about 2 weeks.
Next up is a gentleman who knows everything about Orson Welles. It's Donovan Runwald.
Great to be here, Blaine.
Man, I miss that.
Hoping you'd do an Orson Welles impression.
Great to be here, Blaine.
Lastly, she's very busy, but she's here. She's been busy not shouting, not crying. She's near and dear in Santa's heart. She's Natalie Morrow, no relation to Adam.
Hey, I saw your Christmas lights. They look great, Blaine.
I did not do them. That was a hired job.
Salt in the wound there.
That's fine.
My initial question was instantly, did Natalie help?
Yeah, he did ask
Blaine's
her.
like, no.
I would have been there.
That's what I said too. She would have if she was closer, probably.
I would have been anyway. I'm just that good of a friend.
All right. Ladies, gentlemen, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. They came out, recently released. It was on November 25th, but we haven't all been together as a group since then. I've sat on this topic kind of. So until Adam was back in the fold, we briefly texted about it. But it's a multi-disc album. It's a compilation of Petty and the Heartbreakers' residency in San Francisco's Fillmore in early 1997. They sat up shop and became the house band for 20 shows.
I think it's magic. I didn't do the physical release, but I pulled it up on Spotify, and you can know that it's 20 nights worth of material or culled from 20 nights, and then you start scrolling through, and you're like, man, they just let it fly. They were always seemed to be a band that loved music deeply. You know, like a lot of those guys who grew up and their formative memory was seeing the Beatles on TV and then going out and buying every 45 they could and learning on like really crappy guitars, and they just had this encyclopedic knowledge, and they seemed to just show up to sound check because they're not really that, you know, the day-to-day was not a big deal. They were in San Francisco and would go over to sound check, and it was like it was the night before, so hey, let's try whatever cover, just let it go, or try Tom's deep cuts. It's so good. It's so fun.
And Tom says we also love playing the hits.
When your hits are that good, right?
Yeah.
They gotta be fun to play.
Yeah, it's one of the best versions of You Don't Know How It Feels. If anyone says they're tired of that song, I think I could understand. It's simple, but I still haven't gotten tired of it.
That's one that does not wear me out either.
Yeah.
That one's a good one.
We all feel like no one knows how it feels to be one of us, each of us.
Bro,
right?
you don't know how it feels.
And I
think that every day about someone. I pass someone in the hall and I think, that son of a bitch doesn't know how I feel. Fuck them.
You quickly turned
Daily.
You quickly turned it into a statement on all of humanity, but at first I thought you meant like those of us in the podcasting elite. You know, you don't know how it feels to be one of us, and then you saved it, and then you went right back down. So that was impressive work.
That's usually what I do.
Yeah.
But, that's just one of many great performances. It's Good to Be King, one of the top performances. Now, some of these were culled and used in his live anthology. If any real big Heartbreakers fans have heard it, that's also a multi-disc compilation, but it's over his whole career. This one, though, over the Fillmore, where, like Adam said, Tom purposefully decided and told the band, let's just go and play and have fun. And there's even a lot of moments where Tom takes lead guitar, and you can hear Mike Campbell somewhere, or at least he's quoted as saying, coming off the stage off that first couple of nights and saying, I thought I was the lead guitar player, because Tom had taken so many solos.
It does. It's reminiscent of the way Mike Campbell runs his Instagram now. You can see how that energy was always there, where if you don't follow him on Instagram, it's a joy. He just seems to be whoever's backstage, the Dirty Knob shows, or around his house, film him and his crew taking a run at an old rock and roll song or doing whatever. It's just a lot. It's just a good time. I keep saying it's fun. They just seem to love what they do.
It injects you with energy too. It made me wish I could get back on stage.
I mean, a 20-show residency at the Fillmore sounds pretty awesome.
That just sounds pretty fun. I mean, I'd take a 2-night stand at Green Bar at this point.
Is the Green Bar still there?
Probably not. It's probably gone to hell like the rest of that town.
It's probably just yet another outpost of the Houndstooth or something like that. The filling station.
Yeah, that's more like it. Adam, do you have a favorite cover that they did?
I got to spend more time with them. I thought the Time Is on My Side was pretty good and kind of haunting to listen to. A band that was having so much fun. And, I wouldn't call. He made it to his 60s, but still, Tom Petty should still be with us. And hearing him in his element with his buddies singing that song was kind of bittersweet. And I thought that was a really special performance.
I think I saw Petty in 97. I was quiet for a second because I was doing the math. Pretty sure I saw him in Tupelo, Mississippi. Well, it was the Dogs Have Wings tour, so that would have been 97, right?
It's a heck of a time to see him.
He was on fire. He ended the show with Gloria like he did these residency shows, or he did for some of those. So, same thing there. So I'm thinking it's so he did these residencies at Fillmore in late January, February, and then I think I saw him in sometime that year.
I love it when bands play cities like Tupelo.
Yeah, I've seen Dylan there twice.
Dylan is unafraid of small southern towns, and to see Petty
doesn't give a shit.
I think they geek out on it because again they are students of the history of music and understand. Playing in Tupelo is pretty cool. Playing anywhere in Mississippi. Do I want to move to Mississippi tomorrow? Not particularly, but I know people listening from outside Alabama are going, well, you live in 49, it's just moving to 50. But
that's good.
The depth of
you don't know how it feels.
Yeah, there you go. The depth of American cultural history in Mississippi and places like that, to hear them tear it up there would have been pretty amazing. I'm jealous.
I've only ever driven through Tupelo, but it seemed like an interesting place. That would be an interesting place to see a show. I have no memories except just driving through it.
I spent a lot of time there. It was one of the two choices to go to for a mall, for a movie theater that played more than 2 movies.
You ever listen to the Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds song Tupelo?
But once, I think. Do you like it?
I think it's their first good song. Oh. That's not true. It's their first great song.
I'll go back to it because it may have been a while.
All about the Tupelo flood.
I love imagining those guys riding through Mississippi at like 2 a.m. in their suits. Sounds great.
I probably saw them. I mean, passing in the car. That is not like at a show. So the Tom Petty album is just so good. It's life affirming. That's what we'll call it. Natalie Donovan, have you listened to any of it?
Yeah, I've listened to a little bit of it on my way to work after y'all were talking about it because I like Tom Petty, even though I don't know any of his heartbreakers. I know not a one.
He does now.
Y'all just told me their names and I've forgotten. The only one I know is Ben Montench because it's Blaine's name right now.
We put it on.
Pete Campbell. Mike Campbell.
Pete Campbell.
Did you say Dwight? Dwight Campbell.
I said Pete. Pete Campbell. Mike Campbell.
So we were driving back from the beach from Thanksgiving. I told Adam, I was driving, it's my shift, traffic was terrible. I told Adam, please just play some like hi-fi pop so I can just zone out and get us home. So of course his answer was to turn on this record. And I wanted to be annoyed. It wasn't quite what I meant, and I really wanted to be just like, he doesn't get me. But it was so great that I couldn't be upset. It was good, you know, just a great. I love a good, just like, I know you guys are like music snobs and want to like dissect everything, but I'm here for a good time in the car, and that record is a good time in the car.
It really is, yeah. Good example of a good time. Let's shift gears a bit. Let's go TV now. And so Netflix has recently released a show, Wednesday. That's the name of it. Not like, did they release it last Wednesday?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
That is a good question.
This is a series based around the famous Addams Family young lady. Hopefully now it makes more sense. Wednesday. And it stars Gina Ortega, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Luis Guzman, and Gwendolyn Christie, among others. Now, I mention it, not that I've watched it, and I don't think Donovan has either, but...
I've not watched it. Isn't Tim Burton involved with this one?
Yeah, he is, and you should watch it and
right
stop
there.
being cooler than you think you are.
Wait,
it's cursed. That's cursed right there. Tim Burton is
how involved is he, by the way?
I think he's pretty involved, right? He's like the director or something. I don't
No
know.
way.
He's got like a big title.
Okay.
He directed the most recent episode that you watched, Nat.
Then he's directed all of the episodes that I've watched, which are 3.
The last Tim Burton movie I watched was Dark Shadows, starring Johnny Depp, and it made me never want to watch a Tim Burton movie ever again.
Why?
And you didn't blame Johnny Depp?
No, he's being enabled by Tim Burton. Because I like one Tim Burton movie. I like Ed Wood, also starring Johnny Depp. But it's not Johnny Depp's usual shtick. And he's not being enabled by Tim Burton there.
You don't like Batman?
No, I don't really care for the Tim Burton Batman.
What about Batman Returns? It's so quirky.
No, don't really care for it.
It's a Christmas movie, too.
Take him out. Donovan's out.
It is a Christmas movie.
He's off the
Let
podcast.
me find my button to kick him out of this pod. Where's that button?
Even something like Beetlejuice, there's parts of it I appreciate, but I think it needs more Beetlejuice.
I can get that a little. No, I like Tim Burton. Okay, he is a roller coaster. You don't know if it's going to.
He
be
is a roller coaster.
You don't know if it's going to be good or real mediocre. I wouldn't say it's going to be awful or bad. It's just going to be a little blah sometimes. I did not know he was involved with this. That explains some things, though. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because Natalie revealed to me she's been binging it, but I've noticed a lot of hoopla online about it and beyond, not just online, like people at work. It's a water cooler show for some reason these last week or two. What's happening here? Why do you think people are just drawn to it? Is it because it's an Addams Family and they're familiar and they got an itch for some Addams Family, or
I'm sure it's a combination of, like, for millennials, it's probably kind of that nostalgia. For Gen Z, Jenna Ortega is like a real big deal, and so they're into it, and it's kind of following that. It's very much stylized in the way that, like, I don't know if y'all watched any of, like, the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina or whatever that was. It's very much that kind of, like, it's polished, it's dark, but it's just fun, and there are laughs, and it's just a good time. It's just a good sit on your couch for an hour and watch something that's enjoyable.
I noticed my wife was watching it the other day, and she was folding clothes. And what do we got? 10 episodes? Your usual Netflix 10? Is that what's happening?
I think so.
I think I heard it described as sort of a coming of age, which is a popular thing to do now, is where you take a topic that's, somewhat well tread and use something everybody knows, so you draw in more of an audience. Is there a sweetness to it?
Yeah, I think so. It's there.
Because the more I read about it, the more interested I am. And when I first just saw the title, I thought, okay, that's not really for me. I kind of missed out on some of that Addams Family resurgence in late 90s, early aughts.
You didn't watch the movies?
I did, but in passing, kind of like they were probably on while I was doing a bunch of other things.
Honestly, I think best experience that way. Because they're like a selection of, like, sometimes funny bits, but you put it together and it's kind of like, that was just an okay movie.
Yeah, it was a kid's movie, though.
Oh, yeah.
I do remember.
Was it a kid's movie? Didn't the second one have a PG-13?
I mean, just because the first one was out, and you catch all your 8, 9, 10-year-olds, and all of a sudden they're 13 when the sequel comes out.
That's true.
How aging works, Donovan.
Yeah, well, it's the Harry Potter method.
That's right.
Grow old with your
True.
audience.
That's true.
I just remember Angelica Houston being in it as the matriarch.
She's always great.
Yeah, she's pretty cool. Okay, I was just really curious because the two things, more and more people seem to be watching it, and I didn't know why. I thought, not necessarily that I've missed something, but I just kept thinking, oh, it must be good, and why is it good?
I don't think you would like it.
You don't tell me why.
I don't know. I feel like you'll watch like half an episode and be like, I get it. And that's not for me.
That could happen. I don't know.
I feel like it's a little too CW.
Okay. Okay. That description explains a lot.
The thing about the CW show is, and I don't know why this is, but a real hallmark of a CW show is that whenever there's dialogue, it's just people standing around.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever doing anything. They're all just kind of standing there.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I don't know what it is.
Let's take a break, and on the other side, we'll dive into our other two topics, which is the Amazon Prime show, The English, and we'll talk a bit about Guardians of the Galaxy's Christmas special. Okay, we're back. The English, that's the name of the show, The English, is streaming on Amazon Prime Video and was created and written by Hugo Blick. It's a production.
Whose name I thought was Black the whole time the show was going on, because that's how I read it in the credits. And then I looked him up to see what else he'd done, because I liked the English enough, and found out that his name was Hugo Blick.
Right. I looked him up too.
Unbeknownst to me.
I didn't recognize any of his other work.
I did not either. Apparently, he has done some stuff that has some notability in England, which makes sense since this is also a BBC production. I'm completely stepping on your lines here. But it makes sense because this is also a BBC production.
No, that's right, yeah.
But I didn't recognize another thing he'd done.
Which is weird because this feels like such a veteran piece of work.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a first-timer, does it?
Which
And
he
especially-
almost is, I guess.
It feels like, you said veteran piece of work, and I think that's great because, he obviously has watched his fair share of Western shows and TV and movies, and is able to nod to those kind of tropes and conventions very, very well without, in my opinion, without being boring or derivative.
It is, as mentioned, it's production in partnership with BBC and Amazon, and I'm here to tell everyone, at least for the first 2 episodes, I can say this, go and watch it. If you're tired of the same old when it comes to TV, maybe you're a Western person, maybe not. I can see the benefits of both in coming into this. This is something to see, quite literally.
Yeah.
It's something to see. We're going to break some of this stuff down and get into spoilers and reveal more. It stars Emily Blunt as an English lady in the early United States, specifically 1890, and she has come to America to find a person who killed her son. Early in her trip, she encounters a Pawnee native going by the name of Eli Whip. That's about all. I knew that's about all you need to know. Just go watch it. If you've watched at least
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was going to back you up there and say those first 2 episodes are explosive.
My goodness. If you've watched the first 2 episodes, hang with us. We're going to tell you a lot more, or we're going to unpack some of this and spoil it. Man, from top to bottom, this thing is stylized, but...
Absolutely. It kind of reminded me, there were moments there that reminded me of the Coens' take on True Grit, just because that's a more stylized... there's that great scene where Jeff Bridges, yells out, "Fill your hand," and takes on like 6 gunmen at once. And it reminded me, it's like watching a great Western movie.
Yeah, it really is.
There was a little bit at the beginning. There was a little bit. I think it's something. I wish Adam was here because he would probably know more about this. But there's something about a BBC show where you can tell it's a BBC show. Something about the cameras. And so that bothered me for about 15 minutes where I really noticed it, and then I just quit noticing it.
That's really funny because when I found out it was a BBC, when I found out it was BBC, I was shocked. I didn't know at all.
It's BBC. It's filmed all over. It's basically a spaghetti western. It's filmed in Spain.
That's right. The editing is the first thing I'll mention because it's the first thing that jumped out at me. I could not believe that they chose that style of editing. It is very quick jumps.
Yes.
And it's which goes hand in hand with the dialogue, but the jumps, the edits really are anti-Western.
Well, if you think of a Western as being kind of slow and ponderous, it's anti-Western. But I don't know if I would necessarily call it anti-Western because I think there's so many good Westerns. One of the things I noticed about this one is that there's a lot of, it's like dialogue punctuated by really quick violence, almost shocking and startling violence. And I think that maybe that's a little bit of the revisionist Western here, but I do think that I can't think of any off the top of my head. All I can think of is Stagecoach for some reason. That's the only Western that's popping into my head right now. But I don't think that it's. I don't necessarily know if I agree with you that the editing is anti-Western.
Revisionist, I think, is something we'll both agree on there. The dialogue is almost Aaron Sorkin-esque.
I believe it's Kieran Hines? Kieran Hines, who appears in the first episode. Yeah. Obviously having the time of his life, being the villain. And shares a meal with Emily Blunt's character, and the dialogue, it's fencing. And it's great because there's such an undertone of menace in it because he has basically told her that he's going to kill her. And I think rape her too.
Maybe. That's in the air, right? So
that's in the air.
She asked him that, yeah.
She is fending him off, not just verbally, but she also may have to use her physical. It was great.
Yeah. No.
She might have to physically fight too.
I was so taken aback by those quick edits, and once I fell into that, not that I was taken aback, but I loved it. It kept me thoroughly involved.
Those first two episodes, I think, are. Now, I've seen all of it. You've only seen the first two episodes, Blaine?
That's right.
So it does start to get a little bit more convoluted, and it doesn't quite have the moment. It doesn't, in the middle stretch, it doesn't necessarily have the momentum of those first two episodes, but I think that those first two episodes are really well done and really well edited and really well paced, so that it's never boring.
Would have looked great on a big screen.
Absolutely. And it's kind of a shame that I watched it on a small screen because I looked up who the camera person was, and it's a woman I didn't recognize, and she just did a fantastic job of getting the sweep and sprawl of the Old West. Sometimes there's moments where you have like two figures and there's no one else for clearly miles around, and or you just have that sense of growing isolation. Like you're away from all civil. It looked great.
Yeah, and
looks great
in a haunted kind of way. It did manage to do that. America is as a new place. It gives this show did something a little original in that it's given me an idea of why sodbuster or homesteader would be a derogatory term.
Yeah. Boomer Sooner, right?
Yeah, and I've watched a few Westerns, and I just took it to mean, it's kind of what Andor did. You just take it for granted that's not a good term, and then you run with it. They don't define it or show you why, but this one does, a little.
And it's so interesting. This is I'm playing word association here, but I just loved that Eli's motivation is he's going to try and take advantage of the Homestead Act, even knowing that because of the color of his skin, he's unlikely to get anywhere, because he's kind of a person completely outside of any kind of home. He doesn't really have a home in the U.S. Cavalry because he's a Pawnee Scout, but he doesn't necessarily have a home with other Indians because he's been in the U.S. Cavalry the whole time.
Yeah, which plays with his identity some. I don't have a place, nor who am I, because he gives about 3 names he could go by. Eli Whip being the most easily accessible to my memory,
and then he's got the names that his family gave him, because I think it was a Baptist preacher that gave him the name Eli Whip, and he's got the name he was born with and the name he earned, and then the name he was given.
I was weirded out at first by this because it seemed as though it was a standard Western story, but wanted to be jazzed up. But the thing was, I loved the jazzing up. It was It was, you watch a lot of modern day westerns, and sometimes you'll see a few that are, it's almost as if the filmmaker's saying, but it's not a western, it's just set there. And this one's a damn western. It's just hyper.
Absolutely.
Name it. It's hyper western, it's hyper American, it's hyper. It's
kind of like, it made me think, it's not on the same level, but it made me think of Deadwood.
Yeah.
In that it embraces, it is what you just said, that it is a western, and it wants to tell those stories that maybe only a western can tell. Mm-hmm. Stories about America, mm-hmm. American exceptionalism and expansion and colonialism and imperialism and all those kinds of interesting things that you can start to explore nowadays if you're making a western.
Yeah, the immediate aftermath of that.
And to some extent, you could always explore because, the Western under the Hays Code was a way to talk about stuff without really talking about it, mm-hmm. putting it in a different time and place, having the good guys always win. You were still able to get at some uncomfortable truths. And
that makes sense with this one, too. It's hard not to mention Tarantino.
Like in Django Unchained or
The Hateful Eight. It has a few of those vibes.
And actually, it's interesting that you brought that up because I think it was Brian Tallarico, whose name I always mispronounce, from RogerEbert.com, that also invoked Tarantino, especially where you have the talky bits that you always know are going towards bursts of violence.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's kind of interesting because it's like, why would the character, if it's all going to end in these short punctuated bursts of violence, why would the characters talk? And so you kind of get, when it's done well, and I think this is done well, it's people justifying themselves and telling their stories, and it's always going to end in violence, but there's a reason that they're talking. They're not just talking to fill up space.
That's true. Every encounter in this is just hyper tense because everyone is an antagonist to the other. Anytime you see someone coming up on horseback or anytime you see a town on the horizon, you get instantly worried. And that you have to wonder, it might have been like that. Were Americans that unfriendly toward one another, early Americans?
It does make you wonder. Somebody called this, I think it was the Guardian review of this. I read a couple reviews because I wanted to be able to talk about this because I really did end up, I've had a couple days to sit on this show, and I think I ended up really liking it. They called it a place where no one can hear you scream, mm-hmm. kind of taking the Alien tagline, but it's asking how many of us would have the decency that Eli preserves in a place where you can do anything.
Yeah, that's it. They're out there where the law's not going to get to you. There aren't any laws in some of those areas because they're just wilderness. They're not claimed.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the Eli, the camera loves that actor. And
man, I have a Google search open right now for the English because I knew I was going to forget his name. Chask Spencer was so dang good.
Yeah, put him in anything.
And he is so, I guess the word is photogenic.
That's it. Yeah.
When you said the camera loves him, he does such an understated performance. Mm-hmm. He's laconic, and he manages to convey sometimes weariness, sometimes irritability, sometimes just world weariness, sometimes happiness. He was so, both of the leads, but really, I'd seen Emily Blunt in things where I thought she was good. So that I thought she was very, very good, but she wasn't kind of as much of a surprise.
That's right.
And Chas Spencer was, if there is a God in heaven, this should be a breakout role for him.
Hopefully,
I guess he's mostly known from the Twilight movies, which I've never seen.
I've never seen
but I guess he was. So I guess Twilight fans out there, don't stone me. I think, if I remember correctly, the werewolves in there in Twilight are Native Americans.
Okay.
And so he plays one of the werewolves in Twilight.
Wow.
And that's basically been his big thing, and if there's any justice in this world, this will be a breakout role for him.
Yeah. Those first 2 episodes, particularly just the first 2 episodes, they have this feel with the score of this excellently well put together and well deserved Oscar winning film. The first 2, at least. Now you talk about a dip that happens, but
and maybe this is me being swayed by reviews, but I did kind of feel this way. There's a couple. Had they introduced the character of Tom? This isn't a huge spoiler. Had they introduced the character of Thomas Trafford in the first 2 episodes? I believe they did.
I believe they do, but he hasn't been called by name, or I bet I know who you're talking about. I have watched the first few minutes of the 3rd episode as well, and I think that's him too.
And so he's one of the characters that I think they kind of flash back. He's in there because he's part of a flashback, but he's sort of a narrative dead end. And there's characters that keep getting, like Black-Eyed Mog, I think we see in the second one. She comes back, but really quickly. Sometimes it gets a little distracted, and then it gets tighter again.
That's, okay.
Especially, and you also haven't gotten to the reveal of the big bad.
No.
The man that she's hunting. And
not at all.
I wish he had, because it's a pretty nasty and compelling performance. He obviously is having the time of his life.
What do you make of not using the son's death as a preface? Most shows or movies would have given you that instantly. Instead, you just get Emily Blunt showing up, and it feels as though some of her grief has already worn off. Understandably, because it takes 2 months to get to America.
Yeah.
What do you think about beginning with her entry into the United States, which really you don't. You begin with Eli's exit of the Union Army and like, okay, I'm gonna go set up a home. Then you get Emily Blunt's character, Cornelia. You don't get her son dying. You don't get that.
It's so part of it is going to be resolved in the plot as it goes forward, because obviously there's the how and why did her son die. And so it's a little bit of and the plot can be a little convoluted, but it's a little bit of plotting. But I think it really gives you and Emily Blunt the opportunity to kind of learn about her character as you go along.
Okay. That sounds promising.
Yeah, I think so. We learn, she shows a little bit more of herself and who she is with every episode. And Emily Blunt is doing like this high wire act of tough and vulnerable.
Yeah. At
the same time, she's emotionally vulnerable, certainly, but she's also, she's a champion archer and can kill someone at 200 yards.
That's right.
And we see that.
Yeah.
And Emily Blunt is just great.
Yeah. I felt as it was a sign of a good show from obviously the cinematography, the score, the dialogue, the acting. I noticed at the end of episode 2, I cared about Cornelia and Eli not being together. At the end of episode 2, they had to split. And I thought, okay, I already care about that. So this is going somewhere. And a little of that work was done in the actual preface of episode 1, where you get a little bit of voiceover from Emily Blunt. And I hearkened back to it and then thought, oh, yeah, so this might be kind of sad or something. I'm excited to finish.
It's short. It's only 6 episodes, so it's definitely. I was able to do it in a week. It's got some great not cameos, but it's got some great character actors in it. Did you notice Uncle from Reservation Dogs was in it?
And I love him. And
he's great.
It's funny because Hines was in it, as well as the stagecoach operator from episode 1, and they were both in the previous work we talked about with The Wonder, and now we have The English. I just thought that was an odd coincidence.
Funny how that kind of worked out.
Yeah, and they both played kind of small roles in The Wonder, but yet also, exactly the same thing in episode 1 of this show. We got a little time to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special, and I don't know that we need a lot of time. It kind of works out.
It's very slight, isn't it?
So let's get into that.
Yeah.
So Guardians of the Galaxy doesn't need a lot of setup. It is what it says. It's the Christmas special.
No, it's exactly as advertised on the package.
You called it slight, and I don't disagree with that at all. But It's slight, but I don't know that would be that's not a negative connotative word.
Yeah,
in
it's
this
not
instance.
necessarily. It's slight in the way that like apparently James Gunn wrote the script in a couple of hours, and it totally shows.
Wow.
But
yeah.
Also, it's kind of slight in the sense that like it's light.
Yeah, it
It has moments of fun.
Yeah, I think the runtime's 40 minutes.
It's nothing too heavy. It's about 40 minutes. I think a little bit under.
Yeah, counting the credits, probably will ride a little under that. But I did like it. For 35, 40 minutes of just watching these goofs be goofing off.
Sometimes James Gunn's humor is a little too on the nose and obvious, but when I finally laughed when Mantis and Drax are in LA, and there's like the Transformers guy there, and she's like, "I'm sorry, he doesn't mean to be bigoted. His cousin was killed by a GoBot," and then they call back to it with Mantis getting her picture taken and Drax just beating the shit out of the guy in the Transformers costume. And I was like, that was kind of that kind of tossed off but goofy fun humor. Mm-hmm. It's redeeming quality, I think.
No, that's it. That's what made this good. I'm going to put it in the category of good because it was so lighthearted and fun. But James Gunn, credit to him, but a ton of credit to Dave Bautista. They know the Drax character better than they know any of these other characters. Maybe Mantis a little, but...
I think I agree with that, where Drax is... Because he really cast to carry the whole thing.
And he's great. If he had his own movie, it might be too much, but pairing him, making sure he had a lot of screen time with Mantis was the smart move.
And Dave Bautista, obviously... Well... He might come out with a memoir talking about how much he hates playing Drax the Destroyer. But it seems like Dave Bautista has a lot of fun playing Drax.
You would have to sit in makeup for that long, right?
I think so. Between the makeup and he's kind of on the edge of being an obnoxious character.
Mm-hmm. Dave Bautista's been on record as saying he's no longer a fan of the exercise routine it takes to be Drax. And who can blame him?
I don't blame him at all.
I'm there with you.
Total side note, but Dave Bautista is actually he's a former pro wrestler and all that. Yeah. But have you ever seen him in something that's not Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah.
He's actually pretty good.
He's great.
He's got a lot of charisma.
No, we've had the conversation on this podcast where we came down to Bautista versus The Rock as far as their acting career, and I think we all sided, with the exception of Natalie. She may have not even been in on that episode. We all sided it's Bautista. He can do work.
That's right. I forgot about that.
That man can work. I don't know if he had a better acting coach or if it just came to him more naturally than Dwayne Johnson. But
to be clear, this podcast respects Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
We don't want to shit on The Rock because I think he's cool and funny, but he's just not Bautista. He's not as an actor.
I think Bautista is a better serious actor.
That's what I was going to say. I could see Dave Bautista being in a serious role and maybe even having to cry or convey sadness and believing him.
Oh, have you ever seen Blade Runner 2049?
No, I didn't see that one.
So he has the tiniest of roles right at the beginning, but it sort of sets up some of the emotional underpinnings of the whole movie.
And he does it?
I think he pulls it off.
Yeah.
And it's kind of incredible because he has he has no more than 10 minutes of screen time. I think it's closer to 5 minutes.
Yeah, good for him. I'm a fan of his, kind of, in a weird little way. I'm not going to seek out everything he does, but if I find that he's in something, I'm really cool with it.
Yeah, it's kind of a bonus, right? Kind of like that nice cherry on top.
Right. He's going to be in the horror movie Cabin in the Woods, or Cabin at the End of the Woods. Cabin at the End of the World. Thank you. Yeah, it took me a minute. It's based on a very good Paul Tremblay novel.
I will probably watch that because I listened to the novel.
Did you like it?
As an audiobook. I did like it.
Pretty creepy.
I would say that Paul Tremblay... This is a sidetrack.
We are.
I would say that Paul Tremblay very, very much likes dealing in ambiguity.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was pretty good. It was pretty effectively terrifying.
Yeah.
If Bautista... I didn't know Bautista was going to be in that. If he plays the character I think he's going to play.
Yeah. He does.
I could see him being really... Okay.
I think he does, yeah.
I could see him being really good at that.
Yeah, but back to Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, if I tell you Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special, there was absolutely nothing surprising about this. Like it hit every beat. Maybe the only thing that kind of caught me off guard was the animation at the very beginning and a little at the end.
At first, I thought I was watching the wrong thing for a second.
Do you think you were watching heavy metal?
Yeah, it did kind of have that vibe, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
You totally expected the old 97s to be in it as the Christmas band?
Okay, yeah, that got me, and it was funny. That was another
the song
bit,
was funny.
It was another bit of humor just seeing Rhett Miller in that much makeup.
Yeah, this one hit. You said there was nothing surprising about it. It's nothing surprising as a Christmas special. And nothing surprising about it as a Guardians of the Galaxy.
Not really.
Piece of entertainment. Even down to the 80s nostalgia bit where they actually get Kevin Bacon, who probably doesn't have that much going on, but they get Kevin Bacon to be pretty heavily involved in the goings on.
And in a short amount of time, he had to go from get me the hell out of here to, oh, okay, you guys are kind of cool. I suppose Kevin Bacon can do that, and he did it. It's fine.
He's Kevin Bacon. He's a perfectly fine actor.
Yeah,
right?
he is.
Like this is
he is.
And he seemed like he was in on the joke here.
Yes,
and
playing himself.
It was kind of funny having all these professional actors say actors the worst people.
Okay, yeah. So
Kieran Gillen's delivery of "I guess not every actor is a piece of shit" was. That was pretty good.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like maybe we enjoyed this more than we even thought, but it was good.
I think so. I watched it about 2 hours ago.
Yeah, you did.
So I just watched because my wife is lesson planning right now, and she's just like, put anything on the TV. It doesn't matter. It just has to be distracting. Mm-hmm. And so I watched that.
I think we watched this on a whim because I didn't want to get into anything too serious, and we had just spent a lot of energy putting up trees and doing that, and we just put it on. It really works in that arena. If
it's that perfect kind of somewhat mindless, like it hits the Christmas notes.
Yeah, if you've had enough of your usual Christmas stuff, but you want a 35-minute show, maybe you got some kids in the house who are 8 or 9 years old, a little bit out of the Rudolph range, this one hit well enough.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's I don't know if it's destined to be a holiday classic a la Rudolph. No, but
I guess the only heavy thing it wanted to do was tell you that Chris Pratt's character Peter Quill has a half sister.
Yeah,
in the Guardians.
It's kind of funny because I described it as very slight.
Yeah, and even that is.
But that reveal could potentially be, as the Guardians of the Galaxy go forward, that reveal could potentially be a big deal for a Quill's character and for Mantis's character. But it just felt, it was more of that. Again, it was just that little sweet little cherry on top more than anything else. It wasn't. Palm, I forget her last name, got to do a little nice acting as she confesses to being his sister, and Peter got to have his moment where he's totally overjoyed and accepting. So
yeah,
it was kind of sweet.
Yeah,
but it probably doesn't really matter.
Well, there's nothing wrong with this. Go watch it, have your fun. There's
nothing wrong with it. That's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah,
just enjoy it.
Yep. And so that's what we'll do. That'll be it for this episode. But for Taking It Down specifically, we're on Twitter and Instagram as Taking It Down Pod. You can always follow the home site, the Alabama Take. That's the website and production company for us. Find us, join us, talk to us, and we'll be back next week. Talk to you later.